All right, everyone. Today we are talking about psychology and careers. Now we've discussed a little bit about career development theory. We've gone into some self-exploration with assessments, and now we're going to look at a range of careers that are available for psychology majors. And this may or may not be news to you, but you have a lot of options to consider with a psychology major because it is a gateway major, meaning there's lots of things you can do in and then without, or not without, in and outside of psychology. So let's explore. We're going to develop an understanding of the types of psychology careers available within and across different education levels. We're also going to use some tools to research what we find a little bit further, right? Because it's all well and good to see forensic psychologists pop up and think it sounds interesting, but where are some resources where you can dive a little bit deeper, see what kind of salary that comes with, see what kind of education level you need, things like that. So that's what we're hoping to achieve today. All right, quick snapshot at the agenda. Let's dive in. So people that graduate with a psychology degree or a psychology major in their undergraduate career, about 27% of the graduates say that they're working in a job that's closely related to the major, which is less than maybe we would expect, right? But because it is a gateway major, a lot of people can work in different capacities. 35% of grads indicate that their jobs are somewhat related to their psychology major, and 38% note that their work was not related to psychology. Now, I would imagine that if I pressed the people who are saying that it is not related to psychology, we could find some connections, but I get what they're saying. It's not directly related. It's not within a psychology field, even though they probably are working with people or using their critical analysis skills that they developed within their program. And this is taking that information and doing a bit of a deeper dive, and this will be on the blue line page, so if you are wanting to look more by the time I click to the next one, look at your own leisure. But you'll see that students that get a master's, I meant to say students that get a bachelor's and haven't yet gone on for further education don't typically work within professional services, and that's really where we think of a lot of psychology careers. So if we're thinking of counseling or therapist or a psychologist or something within that fashion of social services, professional services, that would be the yellow. So only about 17% do that with a bachelor's, and those jobs typically aren't as well paying. Not that there aren't exceptions, but normally, especially if you're staying in the Omaha area, I would imagine around 40,000 for starting entering. It might be closer to 35 or so for those bachelor positions. If you're looking for other places that students go with a bachelor's degree outside of those professional services, the biggest areas would be sales, something in business. So we could think of HR, that would be a very popular place, but also management would also be popular. Master's, doctorate, professional, if you're seeking further education, a bigger likelihood that you're actually going to go in then to professional services. So that's a thing to keep in the back of your mind as we're looking through careers. Where do I want to go? What degree can help me get there? And a lot of time when we see teaching in these areas, that can be alongside professional services. So certainly those of you who are interested in pursuing a PhD or a PsyD, often teaching comes alongside professional services. So it could be professional services and teaching, like at a college or a university. All right, so thinking of transferable skills, I'm not going to dive in too deep because we did talk about this at least to an extent in the previous lecture for self-assessment. When professors and students who are either professors of psychology or students who have completed psychology did a survey and tried to collect data on what psychology majors were learning, these were the top skills. Predict and understand the behavior of individuals and groups, understand how to use and interpret data, evaluate legitimacy of claims about behavior, know how memory and learning function, have insight into problematic behaviors, etc., etc. Okay, I'll let you read this on your own. I won't go through it all, but these are the types of skills that we're learning. So we'll keep that in mind. And then thinking about those skills we talked about before, that NACE surveys employers and asks them what they're looking for in a candidate. Again, NACE was that National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they're looking for skills that, if we compare the two, often lead into the other. Right? So predicting and understanding the behaviors of individuals and groups, that's really knowing people. It's talking to people, understanding why someone might be acting some way, and you can adjust your own actions based on what you're seeing from that other person. That would help in leadership. That would help in ability to work in a team, certainly help in communication skills. Understanding how to use and interpret data, that can absolutely help with problem-solving skills. That can help with analytical quantitative areas. That can help with technical skills. And I could go on, I won't, but you can see that a lot of the skills you're learning as a psychology major are going to lean into these skills that employers are looking for, regardless of whether you decide to pursue a master's or not. And certainly for those seeking graduate programs, even though NACE doesn't survey graduate programs, we can infer that someone who's looking for a candidate for a graduate program are going to be looking for very similar skills, right? So this isn't something that only people applying to jobs right outside of college would be benefiting from, but also what people applying to graduate schools would benefit from. Okay, so breaking down the different types of careers based on education levels. So PhD or PsyD, we'll talk a little bit about the two. I can't remember if we talk about it in this lecture, if we talk about it more in the grad school lecture that comes in October. In essence, however, a PhD is going to be more research-based, and a PsyD is going to be more clinical-based. So if you're not interested in doing research, a PsyD might be for you. The costs associated with a PsyD are generally higher because you would typically get more funding for a PhD. So in essence, a lot of the different areas that we have listed here on this slide, you could get a PhD or a PsyD. And I would just encourage someone to look at funding and then to look at employment for those two different areas for each industry that they're interested in. And here I have college professor bolded because oftentimes that aligns with a lot of other areas. For instance, you can be a clinical psychologist and a college professor, or a counseling psychologist and a college professor. Oftentimes that can be tied in with the degree you get, especially if you're pursuing a PhD, less so if you're pursuing a PsyD. But here we have a range of different areas that people typically pursue with a PhD or a PsyD. Mostly psychologist type roles. Again, that would be in that professional services area that we were looking at that previous slide. And don't worry, I'll show you a resource where you can dive into these further in a moment. Then we're looking at careers with a master's, a Master of Arts, or a Master of Science, and those would be very similar. Master of Science typically is more quantitative. Master of Arts would be more qualitative, but it wouldn't hamper your ability to get a career with either. It's just a matter of what that university or program you're interested in offers. So you'll see that there aren't psychologists with an MA or MS. Typically more it would be a counselor role. If you're looking to open up your own practice, it's possible with a counselor role. Usually more difficult to obtain clients with a PhD just because of the perception that PhDs have more prestige than a master's, but certainly there are people who are successful in these areas in private practices too. For PhDs that are more competitive, or PhD programs that are more competitive, some people will pursue a master's so that they are one step closer to getting a PhD and therefore more competitive when they apply. So those are pieces to keep in the back of your head. And this was just showing an example of the different types of programs. Here I have MA listed, but these could be MS as well, but I just wanted to show you what the types of program names would be called if you were trying to do a Google search and looking for these different types of opportunities. So when we're looking at master's versus doctorate, and again, we'll be looking at some exploratory tools in a moment to help deepen that search a little bit, and then there's a graduate workshop that is an optional to attend in October that's given by the psychology department, which can also give you more information on this topic. But some of the big pieces to consider when you're trying to determine, maybe you know that you want to do graduate school, but you're trying to determine, do I want to be a counselor? Do I want to be a psychologist? Maybe I'm really interested in forensic psychology and I don't know if I want to do kind of some of the more clinical work that comes along with the master's, or maybe I want more of the research work that comes with a PhD. If you're looking at a couple of roles like that where you feel like you're right on the verge of wanting a master's or a PhD, talk to someone. That would be my biggest piece of advice, would be to do maybe an informational interview, which incidentally is an assignment later on in this course, reaching out to a professional in the community who is doing a role similar to the type of job you would like to consider or that you are considering, and ask them some questions about what they like about their job, what they don't like, if that person potentially has any recommendations for someone who's just starting out. And you can really often get insight into potential pitfalls to avoid or pieces to start now when you're still an undergrad that can help make you more competitive for that type of program or that type of role. So that would be my biggest piece. Beyond that, you want to think about, of course, money and funding. Master's programs, by and large, you'd have to pay out of pocket. Not that there aren't exceptions. There certainly are master's programs that will have maybe a graduate assistantship or some sort of fellowship that you can get to offset the cost. Typically, a PhD program will have funding attached to it, and the fact that you're going to work as a teacher's assistant or something like that will help go towards funding. The flip side, of course, would be that PhD programs are more competitive and are harder to get into, but you can always talk to admissions counselors. It seems like they're far away, but you can look at the program online, see what their admissions office is, give them a call, and ask what their typical applicant or class profile is, so you can get an idea of, where do my grades connecting with the grades that people are using to get in. Do I have a chance at this program now? Should I do something to make myself more competitive before I apply? Etc., etc. And then a master's can be 1 to 2 years typically, where a PhD program can be 5 to 7. So thinking about all those pieces can help interpret what type of options you want to pursue. And yeah, so things not to consider is concerns about not being smart enough. A lot of us have imposter syndrome where we think, I can't actually do it, I'm not smart enough. You are smart enough. It's the amount of work you're willing to put into it. And that's what's going to make you successful. And then careers with a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, wide range of places that you can go. We have a list here of places that students have gone in the past. And so these are top companies that have hired some of our psychology students. And this would be sometimes within professional services and sometimes without. I keep saying without, sometimes outside of professional services. And then using alumni tool, these are actual titles of some psychology majors from Creighton. So they graduated with their degree, went off into the world, and then these are some of the things that they have done. Okay, we're going to take a field trip, and I'm going to show you some resources that I think will be helpful. So this video might be slightly longer, but it's to connect you to resources. So the first resource I'm going to show you is from the creighton.edu/career center website. I clicked on the Students tab, and I clicked on this Vault Career Intelligence. And the very first time you'll need to log in, just use your NetID email and your blue password. So here I am in Vault. You can do a lot of different things in Vault, like look for jobs and things. I would just have you go to the search tool, and because we're looking at psychology, I would just have you type in social services. And once it lands, I'll have you click on the Guides tab here. There's lots of different jobs you could use this for, so if you're exploring other careers or just want to know about something, certainly you can use it for that. But here we're going to click just on the very first entry, Vault Guide to Social Services Jobs. And then we're going to go to this View Guide. And just as a side note, it took me 2 minutes to get this site up, but I cut it out in the video, so we're all good. Okay, so once Vault Guide to Social Services Jobs comes up, we'll see not a completely exhaustive list of careers that you could access with a psychology degree, but certainly a very good start. So for the sake of argument, let's say that we're interested in being a psychologist. We want to know what that looks like, and there's certainly a lot of places you can go as a psychologist. It's not just one job title. So they'll give you some quick facts, talk about minimum education level. So they're saying that you could be a psychologist with a master's degree and then also with a doctorate degree. They give you an overview, they give you a history. And here in the job, you're seeing that they have little blurbs about clinical, developmental, social, onwards and onwards. They give you some information about earnings, and I'll also show you a salary finder so you can do a deeper dive here as well. Talking about work environment, exploring more information about training, and then diving deeper, talking about prospects, starting out, what advancement looks like, what the outlook looks like, and then also tips for entry and more information. So I know that that's scrolling and that's a lot, but I want you to know that this is here because it really is helpful if you're trying to explore between different careers and you don't really know what they look like. There's a lot here to dive into. So this is Vault. That is one place, and I will link to this on the Blue Line page. We also have candidcareer.com, which if I was on the Creighton career website page, this would be from this career clips link. I had typed in counselor, and so it's showing me a number of videos for people who are working somewhat in that capacity. And so if I want to see what a person working in that area is doing, maybe what some of their advice is, I can go click on some videos, and usually they're pretty short, like 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so we also have that in our back pocket. I'll also now go over to ONET Online. The information here is from the U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics. and it does a good job of giving you some of the quick facts about a position. So in this occupation quick search, I'm going to type in counselor. And here we have a number of different options available. So let's go to mental health counselors. Give me a brief description. They show tasks. I find this really helpful. Can I picture myself doing these things? Is it a guarantee I'd be doing this in every mental health counselor job? No, but it again gives you a good idea of what you might be doing. Go on and on and on. And it also gives you an idea of what people surveyed in this position typically have for education level, whether bachelor's, master's, etc. And then if you ever have taken that strong interest inventory that was developed by John Holland that we kept referring to in the last videos, they also show you their interest codes. So if you were social, investigative, and artistic, you would align with someone who is a mental health counselor. Okay, last piece. Salary Finder, again, this would be a U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics site, but what's helpful here is if you're interested in looking at a position and seeing what the salary is, this can give you a good idea. So let's go back to psychologist. Let's say we want to stay in the area. And here, let's say potentially I was interested in industrial organization psychologists. Here I can see their high range, their median, and their low. And this was just one piece. This is just salary. There's lots of different things that you can do on the site with exploring careers. They have actual assessments that you can do in addition, but they also have salary information and pieces that can help you explore. Okay. So taking it back now, last slide before we end this lecture, just thinking about things that you can do today, maybe overwhelming you with lots of information. Trying on experiences will also be really helpful. Even if you're not sure that you're interested in an area, if you try an internship in human resources, even though you're not sure that's what you want to do, regardless, it's professional experience on your resume, and that's always going to help out even if you decide to shift into a different area. Of course, use the Career Center and EDGE services to help give you a leg up to make sure that you're familiar with the resources that can help you in whatever you're doing, whether it's exploration, whether it's job searching, etc. And also attend job and career fairs. We have one coming up in early October. That information is going to be on Blue Line. I am giving this I'm presenting this right now in May, so I don't have that information for you, but I will post that information on Blue Line to make sure that you can go to the career fair if you're interested in, actually see employers and practice talking to them, right? Because that's huge. We'll talk about networking later on, so I'm not going to get far into that. And then we're going to be working on resumes, but certainly if you want to have a resume in advance of that career fair, come into the Career Center and make sure it's up to date so you can look snazzy when you go talk with employers. Okay, that's it for today. That is the end of the lecture. Thanks for bearing with me to the end. I know this one was a bit longer than some of the others. For the weekly analysis, I'm going to have you do a little bit of exploration on your own, looking at some careers, finding out what some of the things are that you're interested in or not interested about them. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Have an excellent week.